good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Sunday, 6th April 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. United States. The Trump administration's trade policies are drawing criticism, both domestically and internationally. The U.S. has implemented a 10% tariff on imports, with higher levies planned for 57 trading partners, including the EU, drawing criticism from economists who predict increased consumer prices and weakened economic growth. Elon Musk proposed a U.S.-Europe free trade zone, while the EU is formulating a response. The administration faced mockery for imposing tariffs on uninhabited Australian Antarctic territories. Over 1,200 hands-off demonstrations occurred across the U.S., with tens of thousands rallying in Washington, D.C. to protest the administration's perceived overreach and policies. The administration's immigration policies are also under fire, with Silicon Valley opposing restrictions on H-1B visas and the federal workforce undergoing a revamp to prioritize America First policy. The U.S. is revoking visas for South Sudanese passport holders due to South Sudan's refusal to accept its nationals expelled from the U.S., with students stripped of their entry visas receiving orders from the Department of Homeland Security to leave the country immediately. The Department of Justice placed an attorney on leave following a deportation error to El Salvador. A judge ruled against a FEMA funding freeze, and New York will not comply with demands to end diversity practices in public schools. The Biden administration had proposed a rule to extend coverage of drugs like Zepbound and Wegovy designed to reduce emissions of toxic pollutants, including a cancer-causing ingredient used in antifreeze and plastics. South Sudan. The U.S. is revoking all visas for South Sudanese passport holders and preventing new issuances. Secretary of State Marco Rubio cited South Sudan's refusal to accept its nationals being repatriated as the reason for the State Department's actions. Venezuelan. Lawyers report that Venezuelans with legal status in the U.S. are being unlawfully arrested by federal authorities, including ICE, and detained, sometimes for weeks, despite laws banning the government from detaining them. Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to visit the White House to discuss tariffs with US President Donald Trump. This visit, his second since January, highlights the shift in his diplomatic standing in Washington since Trump's return to power. Morgan Ortagus, President Trump's deputy Middle East envoy, met with senior officials as tensions with Israel threaten the truce. Reports say AI models from Microsoft were used as part of Israeli military program to select bombing targets in Gaza. Ukraine. In Ukraine, a U.S. neo-Nazi terrorist group, the Base, led by a Russia-based individual, is advocating for targeted assassinations and infrastructure attacks. The Base, founded in 2018, was subject to an FBI counter-terrorism investigation. Volodymyr Savitsky, a geologist, says Ukraine should cut a deal that gives his country its fair share. In a major mining region of Ukraine, President Trump's proposal to collect profits from mineral wealth is meeting with a mix of skepticism and weary acceptance. Ukraine's future and European security are existential questions for the NATO alliance. United Kingdom. The British maker of Jaguar and Land Rover cars is pausing shipments to the U.S. due to the Trump administration's 25% tax on vehicle imports. Hundreds of protesters gathered in London and other cities globally for hands-off demonstrations against Donald Trump's administration. Australia. The Trump administration's decision to impose tariffs on Heard Island and McDonald Islands, Australian territories near Antarctica, drew ridicule. Japan. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba indicated that talks with the U.S. could see Japan offer a fresh investment package, but ruled out a small piecemeal deal. A carmaker plans to reduce production at its Fukuoka factory and shift some manufacturing to the U.S. to mitigate the impact of Trump's tariffs. Nigeria. The NATO Natasha Akpototi Uduaghan, said Nigeria's third most powerful politician, punished her for not heeding his advances, but that she won't be stopped. India. Waltz will hold talks with NSA Doval on the successor mechanism to the India-US Initiative for Critical and Emerging Technologies. Vietnam. And it, as part of President Donald Trump's move to impose reciprocal tariffs, Vietnam will face a levy of 46% on its exports to the U.S. Global economy. J.P. Morgan said it now sees a 60% chance of the global economy entering recession by year-end, up from 40% previously. Iran. After calling on Tehran to hold direct negotiations on its nuclear program, U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to bomb Iran if diplomacy fails. Natural disasters. Torrential rain and flash flooding are impacting the central U.S. following deadly tornadoes. The National Weather Service warns that rivers are expected to rise for days, leading to extensive flooding of structures, roads, and infrastructure. Day after day of heavy rains have pounded the central U.S., rapidly swelling waterways and prompting a series of flash flood emergencies from Texas to Ohio. The Israeli military faces scrutiny over the killing of 15 Palestinian paramedics and rescue workers in Gaza. Mobile phone footage appears to contradict the IDF's initial claim that soldiers fired on terrorists in suspicious vehicles. The video shows clearly marked ambulances and emergency vehicles approaching a previously hit ambulance. The Israeli military has since acknowledged its initial account was partly mistaken. Palestinian medical officials say the video reveals details of the unprecedented attack. Danish. Families of the deceased workers expressed shock, emphasizing their dedication to saving lives. Israeli troops have deployed to a new security corridor across southern Gaza, named the Morag Corridor, potentially isolating Rafah. Attacks on Gaza have resulted in at least 30 deaths, including in Khan Yunis and Beit Hanun. Turning to international relations involving Israel, U.S. media reports Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is scheduled to meet with President Trump in Washington, D.C. The White House confirmed that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu will meet again to discuss Gaza and tariffs. British Foreign Minister David Lammy criticized Israeli authorities for denying entry and deporting 2 Labour MPs, Yuan Yang and Abtisam Mohammed, suspected of planning to document the activities of security forces and spread anti-Israel hatred. Unspecified Israeli goods exported to the U.S. will face a 17% tariff, despite Israel's move to cancel tariffs on US imports. Regarding the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, growing warnings indicate that food supplies will soon run out. Lastly, Robert S. Rifkind, a lawyer who defended Time magazine in a libel suit brought by Ariel Sharon, Israel's defense minister, over its reporting on a 1983 massacre in Lebanon, has died at age 88. Ukraine continues to face intense Russian missile attacks, resulting in significant casualties and infrastructure damage. In Kryvyi Rih, President Volodymyr Zelensky's hometown, a missile strike killed 18 people, including 9 children, and injured 61 others, including a 3-month-old baby, hitting a residential area near a playground. Mykolaiv also suffered overnight attacks, injuring 3 and damaging homes. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko reported missile attacks in the capital, injuring at least 3, while the Air Force reported missiles entering the Chernihiv region. Satellite imagery reveals a stark dimming of lights across Ukraine since 2022, a consequence of frequent power cuts. President Zelenskyy has criticized the U.S. response to the Kryvyi Rih strike as weak. He also met with French and British military chiefs in Kiev, along with Ukrainian military leaders, to discuss potential multinational peacekeeping force deployments. Despite ongoing US-led ceasefire negotiations, Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines hold little hope for peace. Ukraine accuses Russian forces of executing prisoners of war, citing drone footage as evidence of war crimes. Geologist Volodymyr Savitsky advocates for a deal that ensures Ukraine's fair share of mineral wealth, amid skepticism regarding President Trump's proposal to collect profits from Ukrainian mineral resources. Turning to Russia, hundreds of thousands of émigrés who fled following the Ukrainian invasion doubt they will return home, even with a ceasefire, fearing continued repression. Russia has stated it cannot accept the U.S. proposal for a ceasefire in Ukraine, despite US President Donald Trump expressing his displeasure to Russian President Vladimir Putin. The ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine has now reached its 1.136th day. China is confronting a growing obesity epidemic, with projections indicating that 65% of the population could be overweight by 2030, leading to economic burdens estimated at $57 billion. Facing market uncertainty, Chinese investors are hesitant about domestic investment as real estate values drop and financial markets fluctuate. During the Qingming holiday, authorities are cautioning about fire and road safety hazards as people travel and burn offerings. China's ambitions for international arbitration in its major cities are challenged by credibility concerns, local customs, and geopolitical dynamics. Amid economic difficulties and a competitive job market, Chinese citizens, including restaurant owners and vendors, are providing free meals to alleviate hardship and inspire optimism. Internationally, China has pledged to enact more resolute measures in response to tariffs imposed by the United States, becoming the first nation to react to the latest tariffs. These trade tensions have escalated since the initial tariffs by the Trump administration, with China planning to introduce 34% tariffs on US imports as retaliation. Despite these tensions, African fashion brands showcased their designs at Shanghai Fashion Week, highlighting China's emergence as the world's largest apparel market, set to overtake the U.S. Although China is still Africa's leading trading partner, economic challenges are changing Beijing's approach to economic relations with the continent. Technologically, DeepSeek, partnering with Tsinghua University, has created a new AI reasoning method to guide AI models towards human preferences ahead of its next-generation model release. Chinese scientists are also reporting the development of a molecular elevator that can reportedly boost immunity 150-fold against cancer and viruses, potentially revolutionizing vaccine delivery. In a display of its military capabilities, China conducted a large-scale missile test in the Gobi Desert, signaling its increasing confidence in addressing advanced threats and projecting dominance. Turning to the Philippines, a dispute with China has arisen over the arrest of alleged Filipino spies. The Philippines maintains that those arrested were ordinary citizens, suggesting the arrests could be retaliation for Manila's arrest of alleged Chinese spies. In the United States, its established presence in Asia is notable, but the possibility of a Europe-East Asia economic alliance is a strategic option for both regions. The trade wars initiated by former U.S. President Donald Trump continue to intensify. Japan is experiencing a surge of support for consumption tax cuts as a key policy for summer elections, driven by rising food and commodity prices, even among the ruling party. Prince Hisahito, nephew of Emperor Naruhito, began his studies at the University of Tsukuba's School of Life and Environmental Sciences. In the culinary world, Japanese pastry chefs are increasingly innovating beyond traditional French techniques, according to chef Koichi Katsumata. To enhance safety, the government will require new vehicle models to include pedal misapplication prevention devices starting in September 2028. Interest in UFOs and extraterrestrial phenomena is growing, marked by increased museum visits and large-scale contact events. In sports, Max Verstappen claimed pole position for the Japanese Grand Prix d'Europe. The country also remembers the mass suicide that occurred during the Battle of Okinawa in April 1945. In transportation news, 47 people, mostly foreign tourists, were injured in a tour bus collision on an expressway in western Tokyo. Meanwhile, Chef Saito has shared a recipe for shio sukiyaki with mushrooms, plus shiitake-infused soy sauce, featuring various mushrooms like shiitake, maitake, shimichi, and eringi, along with bacon and mizuna. For over 15 years, a unique group of cheerleaders has been boosting morale at Japan's train stations. United Kingdom firefighters are battling a significant wildfire in Glenshaw, Galloway, in southern Scotland, prompting police to urge public avoidance of the area. Helicopters are assisting in efforts to control the blaze. Labour MP Dan Norris, representing North East Somerset and Hanham, has been suspended from the party after his arrest on suspicion of rape and child sex offences following a police raid on his residence. King Charles may face pressure to temper his public support for net zero emissions, especially after Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch suggested the UK might not achieve its 2050 net zero target. Anti-Elon Musk satire is gaining traction in Britain, exemplified by a mock advertisement featured at a London bus stop. The UK's grooming gang scandal is linked to complex issues of race, class disparities, and misogyny, often impacting marginalized victims. Animal rights groups have raised concerns about the Grand National after Broadway Boy sustained a serious fall during the race, and another horse collapsed shortly afterward. 15 major car manufacturers have been penalized by both the EU and the UK for their involvement in a cartel that manipulated car recycling costs and processes. Prime Minister Keir Starmer is planning to shield UK businesses from potential tariffs imposed by a future Trump administration. Youth with a Mission, WHAM, the world's largest youth Christian missionary organization, is confronting allegations of spiritual abuse and controlling tactics from young individuals who claim to have suffered trauma. India and Sri Lanka deepened their bilateral ties during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, the first by a foreign leader since President Anura Kumara Disanayake's election, signing 7 memorandums of understanding, most covering defense, energy, digitization, and health. Modi expressed thanks for President Disanayake's consideration of Indian interests. Construction began on a jointly funded solar plant. India also reduced interest rates on Sri Lankan loans. Sri Lanka awarded Modi the Mithra Vibhushan Medal. Tamil parties in Sri Lanka want India to continue helping to find a political solution and implement the Indo-Lanka Accord, including holding provincial elections. These parties also requested that Modi ban bottom trawling, citing harm to the Pork Bay ecosystem and Sri Lankan Tamil fishermen, noting Sri Lanka banned it in 2017. 16 years after the end of Sri Lanka's civil war, former female fighters in the northern provinces still have limited opportunities. Australia is seeing debate over international student numbers, with Peter Dutton suggesting a reduction of 80,000 to ease rental pressures, a claim disputed by the Property Council. Dutton also criticised Labor's impact on Tasmania's salmon industry, following recent protective legislation. The Chinese firm managing the port of Darwin has accused both Anthony Albanese and Dutton of politicising its lease. Concerns have also been raised regarding the adequacy of Australia's maritime defences. Australia's federal Greens are prioritising free, universal early childhood education should they hold a balance of power. The skies between Malaysia and Australia saw disruption when a Jordanian national was charged for allegedly attempting to open an emergency exit on a flight from Kuala Lumpur to Sydney. Myanmar is grappling with a complex crisis marked by political instability, devastating natural disasters, and the spread of misinformation. The February 2021 coup, led by General Min Aung-hlaing, continues to destabilize the nation. Russia and China's support has solidified his power. The lack of coordination among rebel groups and the alternative government further complicates the situation. A magnitude 7.7 earthquake exacerbated these challenges. It caused 3,354 deaths, 4,850 injuries, and left 220 people missing. The United Nations and foreign donors are increasing relief efforts to address the widespread destruction. The UN aid chief is calling for more international support. Disinformation, including AI-generated videos and misleading images, has been circulating on social media after the earthquake, prompting fact-checking initiatives. The junta leader has returned from Bangkok after meeting with regional leaders. Spain witnessed widespread protests as tens of thousands rallied against housing speculation, demanding affordable homes amid rising costs. These national demonstrations, organized by housing activists and supported by major trade unions, took place in Madrid and 30 other cities. Madrid alone saw an estimated 150,000 participants, with additional protests in 40 cities. Demonstrators targeted landlords and the government, blaming them for the escalating housing crisis that impacts renters. Meanwhile, in La Liga, Barcelona drew with Real Betis at home, and Real Madrid lost to Valencia, suffering a 2-1 home defeat. The loss puts further strain on the La Liga champions in their title defense. South Korea's political landscape has been dramatically reshaped by the impeachment of President Yoon Suk Yeol, a testament to the nation's robust democratic values. The Constitutional Court unanimously decided to remove President Yoon Suk Yeol from office due to his actions, including a mishandled martial law declaration. This ruling mandates new elections to occur by June. Thousands of supporters rallied in Seoul, denouncing the impeachment as illegitimate. Beyond politics, the competitive education system sees children as young as 4 prepping for the critical Soonyoung College entrance exam. The intense spotlight on celebrities continues, as evidenced by the cases of Kim Soo-hyun and Kim Zae-ron. On the other side of the peninsula, North Korea's Kim Jong-un unveiled a new sniper rifle on the same day as the South Korean ruling. The European Union is dedicating billions to Central Asia. This aims to diversify supply chains and reduce dependence on China. The initiative will boost local industry. It also promotes sustainable mining and competitive economic opportunities. Simultaneously, the EU is preparing countermeasures. These are designed to protect European interests and businesses. This preparation addresses potential tariff negotiation failures with the United States. France has even suggested a suspension of all new U.S. investment within its borders. The EU is also evaluating its global role. It hopes its strong economy and commitment to rules will attract nations. These nations may seek alternatives to a power-based global order. Relations with the United States are strained. President Trump has imposed tariffs. He has also demanded increased military spending from European allies. This has raised concerns about the transatlantic alliance's stability. Cambodia recently saw Prime Minister Hun Manet inaugurate an expansion of the WHAM naval base. This expansion, assisted by China, has raised concerns from the U.S. government, which suspects it could offer China a strategic advantage in the Gulf of Thailand, close to the contested South China Sea. Cambodian officials have refuted claims that the renovated facilities are solely for the Chinese Navy. Separately, Ronan, an African pouched rat, achieved a record by locating 109 landmines and 15 other dangerous remnants of war in Cambodia. Mali has lost a musical icon with the death of Amadou Bagayoko, the guitarist and singer of the renowned duo Amadou and Mariam, at 70. Bagayoko alongside his wife. Mariam Dumbia captivated global audiences with their fusion of Malian traditions, rock, and blues. Their widespread appeal translated into millions of albums sold, solidifying their place as one of Africa's most successful and cherished musical acts. Palestine-Gaza faces dire circumstances as the United Nations reveals a staggering statistic. 100 children are either killed or injured each day in Gaza since the war's resurgence. This report arrives on Palestine Children's Day, further underscoring the profound human cost of the ongoing conflict with Israel, particularly its devastating effects on the youngest and most vulnerable population. Transitioning to the realm of technology, ChatGPT's expanding functionalities, particularly its ability to generate images in styles like that of the renowned Japanese studio, has ignited discussions regarding the scope of artificial intelligence. Concerns are rising about the potential impact of AI on creative industries and the preservation of artistic legacies. France is currently witnessing heated debates surrounding Marine Le Pen's recent fraud conviction. The court's decision has been interpreted by some legal experts as a testament to the impartiality of the French legal system. Yet, the verdict has triggered outrage among Le Pen's supporters. Political analysts, such as Diane de Vignemont, are closely examining the Le Pen 10 appeal. The appeal process and its ultimate outcome could significantly impact her future political prospects. Bosnia and Herzegovina saw German Secretary of State for European Affairs, Anna Luhrmann, expelled from its Serb entity. This action was a direct response to German sanctions previously imposed on the Bosnian Serb leadership. Germany is bracing for economic repercussions stemming from newly enacted tariffs. German Finance Minister Jörg Kukis has warned of a substantial adverse impact on the German economy. Despite this anticipated strain, Berlin intends to engage in partnership-kind negotiations with Washington in an effort to resolve the tariff dispute. Canada's Stellantis plant in Windsor, Ontario, will hold production for a fortnight, a direct consequence of the newly imposed 25% tariff on Canadian-made automobiles. In a separate incident, an Indian citizen was fatally stabbed in Rockland. The High Commission of India in Ottawa has acknowledged the tragedy, stating that a suspect is in custody, though details about the victim have not yet been disclosed. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is facing a severe humanitarian crisis, as Jan Egeland, head of the Norwegian Refugee Council, has criticized world leaders for neglecting displaced civilians. He highlighted the lack of aid reaching the 1.2 million people who have fled to displacement camps near Goma due to the M23 rebel advance. These camps are reportedly overcrowded and facing dire conditions. Syria is at the center of a lobbying effort in the United States, where Henry Hamra, a Syrian Jew, is working with Syrian American advocacy groups. They aim to persuade the U.S. to remove sanctions against the Syrian government. This initiative to ease sanctions is notable due to Syria's past associations with al-Qaeda. It also faces opposition from other Jewish organizations and Israel. The effort is being led by Jews who emigrated from Syria many years ago. India's leading technology universities are grappling with the enduring issue of caste bias. This bias limits opportunities for individuals from lower social classes. Furthermore, the proliferation of betting and fantasy gaming apps in India raises concerns. There are worries about addiction and potential financial exploitation of users. Across Africa, Asia, and South America, scientists are preparing to launch the biomass space probe. The probe's 5-year mission will create detailed 3D maps of tropical forests. A radar scanner will penetrate dense vegetation. This will map forests hidden from view. Argentina is seeing its President Milei actively cultivating a stronger bond with Donald Trump amidst ongoing global trade uncertainties, highlighted by Milei's recent visit to Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Australia's Labour Party is facing potential difficulties according to recent polling data that indicates challenges in key electoral districts, thus placing the Albanese government under greater scrutiny. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, during a recent visit to Greenland, reiterated that Denmark will not be relinquishing the Arctic island to the United States. Egypt is currently hosting French President Emmanuel Macron, who intends to leverage the robust relationship between France and Egypt to advocate for a ceasefire in the Middle East. Simultaneously, activists are pressing Macron to address critical human rights issues during his visit. Fiji's men's team has successfully advanced to the semi-finals of the Singapore Sevens tournament, where they're set to compete against Argentina. Greece has unveiled a substantial defense upgrade, allocating an additional €25 billion to modernize its military capabilities, supplementing the existing military expenditure, which already stands at 3% of its GDP. Hong Kong is grappling with economic revitalization challenges, facing persistent labor shortages and high salary levels that are collectively undermining its overall competitiveness despite government initiatives. Iran's currency has experienced a dramatic drop, hitting a record low against the US dollar at 1,043,000 rials per dollar, a situation that coincides with escalating tensions with the United States. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is currently in Budapest, despite the outstanding arrest warrant issued against him by the International Criminal Court. Separately, Morgan Ortagus, acting as a Trump envoy, visited Lebanon amid growing concerns about the fragile ceasefire and increasing tensions with Israel. Libya's recent crackdown on NGOs, according to analysts, is a strategic move to divert attention from its internal issues, particularly its prominent role as a departure point for migrants attempting to reach Europe. Nigeria was represented at Salone del Mobile by Lani Adeoye, who curated the Craft West Africa display, showcasing her Nigerian heritage and global perspective. Serbia's political crisis continues 5 months after the collapse of the canopy at the entrance to the railway station in Novi Sad. Sierra Leone declared a public health emergency a year ago due to the widespread use of the inexpensive synthetic drug known as Kush. Singapore is seeing Diane Marie Hanna, known for her role in Netflix Con Mum, facing fraud charges, allegedly involved in at least 5 cases of cheating, with losses totaling $149,000. Adding to the sporting scene, the Fiji men's team has advanced to the semi-finals of the Singapore Sevens tournament. Slovakia's government has declared a state of emergency for a significant portion of the country. This action follows a fatal bear attack on a man, prompting the government to order the culling of hundreds of bears. South Africa's needle exchange program in Pretoria, designed to assist drug users, is experiencing negative consequences due to aid cuts implemented by the Trump administration, impacting relationships and treatment efforts. South Korea is facing controversy over the K-pop show Under 15, which is being criticized for encouraging young children aspiring to become K-pop stars to emulate the provocative attire, songs, and routines of established artists. South Sudan is facing repercussions from the United States, which is revoking all visas for South Sudanese passport holders and halting new arrivals due to South Sudan's failure to accept the repatriation of its citizens. Taiwan's indigenous Taroko tribe is actively engaged in revitalizing its traditional culture as part of its recovery efforts following a major earthquake. Italy is celebrating the inaugural journey of a replica of the Orient Express, named La Dolce Vita, Orient Express, which traveled from Rome to Tuscany, aiming to recapture the elegance of the original train and promote slow tourism. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.